Dan Perry, who's an international affairs expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us here today on NewsX World as we're coming in with these breaking news, what's going on. First off, as we know, Oman has been a mediator in these talks between the US and Iran, and now obviously the situations have intensified with what's being broken out today. What more can you tell us about this and how much it's escalating into further regions in the Gulf?
Well, Iran has and can be expected to continue to strike at U.S. assets throughout the Gulf, and so obviously everyone is on maximal alert. There were some missiles fired already and some interceptions that I've seen video of already. We're only at the beginning. Everything erupted some 6 hours ago, but I would say that this, at the very least, can be expected to last some days. And there is something of a surprise today in the comments by President Trump, because the speech he gave was a regime change speech. I mean, he spoke at length about the crimes of the Iranian regime in 47 years of its benighted existence. He called on the people of Iran to take over their country once the war ends, which suggests very much that a goal of the war is to weaken the regime to the point of collapse. That might enable protesters and opposition forces in Iran, and possibly rogue elements of the Iranian army or even the Revolutionary Guard, to remove the Islamic Republic. This is very different from the original argumentation involving a better nuclear deal or even the threat of the ballistic missiles, which was always a little bit weak, because Netanyahu in Israel, for example, stated after the 12-day war in June that both of those threats had been removed for years. And of course, Trump himself was insisting after June that Iran's nuclear capability had been obliterated, and was very upset with intelligence estimates somewhat to the contrary. So it looks like Trump had boxed himself in, having promised the protesters that help is on its way in early January, and had amassed such an armada in the Middle East, with planes located now in Israel as well, that this amounted to a gun put on the table in the first act that inevitably by the end of the play is shot. And if this should actually come to pass, that the regime falls because of this joint Israeli-American action, it would be truly a historic event, one of the greatest achievements of the West in the past 50 years, perhaps number two only to the collapse of communism. So unworthy though many people might believe Trump and Netanyahu to be, they're engaged in an enterprise that has a lot of international support, even in Europe and also in the region.
Thank you, Dan. Please stay with us as we will come back to you shortly. We're now being rejoined by Xavier. Thank you for staying with us, Xavier, and joining us for these latest developments of these breaking news. As we heard that Russia have now said that they urge for immediate halt to these strikes and have conversations with Abbas Araghchi. Do you think anything will come from these talks, or do you think this is going to definitely now still go on for days to come?
If the U.S. was willing to entertain negotiations in order to reach a deal with Iran, that once again, according to what the mediator, the Omani foreign minister, they were very close. He said perhaps 24 hours in order to reach an agreement. And yet he kept going into the dynamics of war. Perhaps that's a decision the U.S. has made, the U.S. with Israel, that is not going to change if Russia gets involved. I don't really think that Russia has, at this stage, any possibility of convincing the U.S. of changing the path. But what we are facing now is a situation where the region is being destabilized. There is an escalation all over the region. There are dozens of civilians already killed in Iran. And I don't think that people that actually want a change in Iran and are in Iran are actually going to support that in order for that change to take place, the killing of civilians in Iran is going to happen.
Thank you, Xavier. Please stay with us as we'll come back to you shortly. There's some more breaking news for you now. Kuwait has confirmed that it intercepted missiles targeting a base housing US personnel. The missiles were reportedly launched towards the base but were successfully intercepted before reaching their target. The situation is undergoing investigation and further details are awaited. We are now being rejoined again by Dan Perry. Dan, thank you for staying with us and joining us here for this latest development. As we know, there have been strikes in Kuwait from the Italian airbase there, and now we hear that more strikes have happened, but they have been intercepted, targeting US personnel. What can we take from these strikes? How much this conflict is now starting to escalate? As we've heard before, it isn't just now targeting military bases. It's now also targeting, as we've heard, for schools, etc. Hi, Dan. Thank you for joining us here on NewsX World. As we've heard, Kuwait has had some more strikes, but they have been intercepted. However, we knew before that more strikes had happened on an Italian airbase. What does these continuous strikes here tell us about this conflict?
Iran is clearly trying to project a determination and resilience. Their goal is going to be to somehow have the regime survive this onslaught. They are assuming that Trump does not have patience for a prolonged war. He famously dislikes long entanglements. And so they're just trying to strike back within reason to not look weak. So far, they haven't done anything that seems calibrated to escalate. They have fired 5 or 6 volleys at Israel, but everything has been intercepted. And as far as I can tell, they haven't gone after critical infrastructure. I think Iran would like to not escalate and merely survive. And in the very survival, they would be able to claim victory. Much depends on the veracity of reports coming out this morning that certain political and military leaders in Iran were killed. I think we'll know in coming days whether the regime is in any danger of collapse. If that should occur, it would take the form undoubtedly of street protest in Iran, of people seeking to exploit the instability created by the attacks to deal the regime a coup de grace. I heard the previous guest speaking of instability in the region and civilians killed, and obviously any civilian killed is a tragedy, and instability is never good. But realistically, in the grand scheme of things, in the past half century or so, the instability in the region and to an extent projected upon the world has come from the Islamic Republic. I'm not a naive believer in things Trump says, and it really is unfortunate that the U.S. president is so given to fabulism that people don't believe even when he's telling the truth. Because in this particular case, like a broken clock that's right twice a day, Trump is speaking the absolute truth about the Islamic Republic. And what is even more astounding, so is Netanyahu. They're right in that if the regime should collapse, then the region will become more stable, not less so. And that is why in Israel, I can report that even though the people in Israel are very badly divided on almost any issue under the sun, and the government is extremely unpopular, and Netanyahu is behind in the polls by about 15 to 20%, on this one particular issue of the danger posed by Iran and the desirability of the removal of the Islamic Republic regime, there's near consensus in Israel. And I would say also that no matter what you hear in public from Arab leaders, they too would love to see this regime eliminated from the face of the earth.